Oh, BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and you guys have been wanting me to talk about the X anime, especially Season 3, but honestly I haven't caught up with everything yet, so when Season 3 starts, it'll finally be time to talk about how the anime fixed Season 2's finale from the manga. There's just a lot of factors that are missing that the anime could have really fleshed out with the final chapter, as well as one battle really needing more elements given that Million was kind of underused and underexplored, which I entirely blame on the toy line not introducing Flame Cerberus much earlier than they should have, or giving the team time to improve it. But if we include the lead up to the finale, including Miss Leader vs. Persona, I can't say I'm upset with the last 8 episodes of the show. So if you got this far, type Big Bang Supernova and let's get started. Alright, first off, I talked about this in a few other videos, but definitely one of the highlights was that Misleaders got way more focus and build up ahead of time, since they're basically introduced to us as mere cameos at the start of the Star Battle, when in the manga we kind of didn't know anything about them until they got introduced. And while we've talked about the build up to when they fight Dreams, which is a good thing to show that yeah, they are pretty strong and they're basically Solidus Tower equivalent to Team Dreams, hence not why only they give us more fights, but also give us more insight onto their characters. Granted, I will say out of the 3, Ryu, Ishin, is sadly the weakest of the 3 in terms of personality. Though I will say I definitely respect how strong he is and his legacy, but the whole Quinn joke can run a little bit too far. But I'd rather take some characterization over no characterization, and the anime gave his battle with Exu a sign to show how Exu would need Extreme Dash to fight him, especially since he has an extra shoot, so good job there. Then we get the Kuga, and he might end up being the fan favorite based on everything I've seen. I mean, I knew and had a hint that the anime was going to flesh out the fact that all of his followers generally just like the guy, and it turns out he's a pretty cool person. That's not just great at certain people having a first impression on him. But adding on to the fact he has allergies was a nice touch to explain the mask, alongside having Tenka speak for the audience, who did justify him, even when his followers would do something stupid. The real impressive feature was how Yoko was handled. In the manga, she just figured out the secret regarding Land sabotaging the event by challenging Bird for more stars. But in the anime, she basically manipulates him into having the third match by using bits of information from both Persona and Zodiac, but just wasn't quite sure about what was fully going on. Plus, it helps that in the manga, all we knew was that she was able to fight by having Fox Brush be a CX blade designed to specifically counter Arc Wizard. But that fight was anticlimactic because Multi just changed to Nightmare for the spin finish advantage. The anime made it much better by showing why Fox Brush was able to counter Wizard Arc, and when Multi switches to Nightmare, Yoko just doesn't go down like a dog. She fights for her whole life with the emanation of way more Avatar battles, and Multi still having to work for her win despite the advantage and disadvantage, since Yoko adjusted her launch to be just in case if something happened. And I don't hear enough people talk about this, but this was Multi's finale battle for Season 2, since she wasn't competing against Zodiac, so for one of the 3 leads, well, 4 for the season, if they didn't put any respect on her final battle like they did last season, it would be seen as a waste of disrespect. So, great job, Beyblade X Anime. In the chat, type Multi got justice. And then we finally get the backstory for Zodiac, which kind of made some conversations in the final part of the manga have a bit more weight, especially since we got to see exactly what led Omega to leave the school. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of agree with Omega's understanding, especially given that Tenka's grandmother and the ideas of traditionalism versus modernity play an epic role in that. Also, I would like to point out, last season we got a trilogy of the Back Then episodes that everyone agreed was a major highlight for setting up the finale, giving more details about Pendragon, the Ananero siblings, and Shieru. And despite the fact that the same person not only wrote these episodes, also told us on Twitter that he was going to write the last 5 episodes, the first one after Multi vs. Yoko was going to be a backstory on Shiraboshi and Zodiac lore. And y'all thought they weren't going to make an episode like this was ridiculous. Y'all should have known better. The thing is, I understand where all 3 women in the family were coming from, but the only issue I feel is the grandmother should have had a bit more signs of regret that her daughter chose to leave, or how Omega had developed ties with Besa. But the manga didn't give us that much detail either, so either way, it's still improvements. Then we get to episode 46, the Star Battle Grand Final. And for starters, it's actually got to see, instead of just the audience being background noises or just cameos for the other contestants, we actually get to hear their perspective since we spent the whole season with them. It's the little things. And first up, we've got Exu versus Flame Cerberus, or Cerberus Flame. Which one do you prefer? Anyway, I've seen people say that this fight wasn't much of an improvement over the manga, but I disagree heavily. For starters, it actually gave Million some character focus and improved his arsenal, since in the manga we didn't even learn what led him to follow Omega. We actually learned that in the show, his backstory, which almost makes him a counterpart to Exu. The Shiraboshi school students challenged him when he knew nothing of the sport. Then Omega whooped him and offered him a chance to join and live up to his potential, which almost makes him similar to Exu in that they're both young teens with insane insane amount of potential and focus, but he doesn't think about strategy despite his strict training, while Exu is always thinking about having fun, battling, and improving. As for Million's battling skill, because we got to see in the past he defeated Shigeru and Dokuga, two people Moti and Tenka had to go through extensive lengths to beat, he at least has feats to make him feel like a threat, where in the manga, we only learned about his Beyblade special ability. They gave him an extra shoot, Purgatory Gate. Come back to this video in a few months to tell me what the Hyper Boost name is going to be in the dub. That allowed him to survive Exu's basic onslaught, but he's also able to survive Exu's extreme dash through force of will. Then he's able to do something that's extremely hard for stamina types to do in X, and reach the extreme dash line on his own to activate his extreme dash, Gates of Hell, from near the center of the stadium. Something even Moti is impressed by, and hell, I'd be too, which Tenka only bets happen on raw tenacity. There's also little things like the fact that Exu using only drawn sword makes sense because that was the last Beyblade people saw him use before he disappeared. So if he used dagger or buster, people would get suspicious. And the fact that they went out of their way to explain why it's going to be a best of round 1 instead of it being a best of 4 was pretty well explained. Omega sees battle as a life or death scenario, which, while a bit extreme, is surprisingly in character. But the real star of the show is Exu. While the visuals compared to the manga aren't as great, they really sell the scale on him being both angry, but also how that drives his passion. With the image of the dragon devouring Cerberus' avatar and dragging him, and drawn sword's impact providing the view of flame Cerberus colliding with the force of the universe itself before flying in the air for style points. After that was Bird versus Loji, and this fight was already good in the manga, but the anime just did a great job of highlighting more of Lance's arrogance, and just the priceless look on his face that he makes when he realizes how much he's been underestimating Bird is very understated. Plus, because the anime went out of its way to give us Bird's backstory, we can actually compare this to Loji, where one was a friend to all people who only got into Beyblade because he wanted to help someone out and help them with their problem, and inherited the love into his own, while initially starting out with a team with his friends. Meanwhile, Loji was effectively a prodigy who, while skilled, tended to underestimate people around him, with hints that he didn't feel like anyone else around him appreciated him or valued his talents. So even in situations where he'd lose, it still wouldn't be easy for his opponents. Well, guys, it's almost like having an anime adaptation would allow you to flesh out these details regarding these characters, and calling them pointless filler is kind of meaningless, especially since there's nothing to say in the anime that it contradicts anything in the manga. And while the visuals try to be consistent with the manga outside of the avatars being much bigger and cooler, looking for subjectivity, the music, like the last episode, really helps sell Bird's surprise advantages and comeback, especially the shot where all the persona light up besides him like X-shaped lights and they all come together to bombard Lance. Then you have the shot of always use of Loji and Perseus looking surprised at his power and extreme dash, but even after the clash, the choice of having Reaper hold Perseus in place to visualize the fact that if they go down, both of them are going down together was such a nice touch. As for Tenka versus Omega, they just made the fight as good as possibly could have been. Good fight that was well choreographed in the manga and just added visuals to make it impressive. The shot of Supernova where she swings the blade down and it just shatters like 4 different planets was just as breathtaking as when Omega decides to run up that with using Pegasus' final drive mode. And then when she activates Big Bang, you actually see Samurai Caliber get shot into orbit. It was actually beautiful. It helps that unlike the manga, they actually separated the fight so that Tenka versus Omega would be episode 99, while Exu versus Omega would be episode 100. But let's get to that final battle, shall we? First of all, unlike the manga where Chrome just showed up out of nowhere, he actually defies Omega's orders and pushes Exu to challenge her, which Exu realizes he needs to embrace his full potential and go all out. We got glimpses of him admitting he could overextend and probably could have self-destructed if Million wasn't so strong. And this time, the anime animated it so that he could handle Second Star, and Omega endures the extreme dash to remember her convictions, fighting so that Shiraboshi School can have her take on a brighter future, to the point where she turns her Big Bang extreme dash into a jumping strike akin to gigantic breaching, only for Exu to turn Dragonic Break into a Cosmo version. But the addition of Tenka and Omega talking amongst the final clash gave those two the closure they kind of deserved, even if they didn't necessarily battle again. And at the end, having Tenka say goodbye to each member of the team and thanking them for any contribution they had at least solidified that even if they're not staying together, that the bond that they had for that whole year isn't something that's going to go away easily. Like, they experienced that together and only grew stronger because they had each other, which the anime definitely gave more time to show us for, with even the addition of Bird getting the plushies from Hina helping him out. It also helps that, we actually get some closure for everyone else for a change. Zuganix members all have their confidence. Yggdrasil and Goldius are getting along and helping each other out. Ginro has his adoptive mentees in need of a proper leader and team to make them less of a mental health disaster waiting to burst. Phalanx can try out new cream. Rex has Ishin to train with Dokuka as a spotter. Yoko and Quinn get their rematch. Chrome is going back to the underground. Pakun can meet the twins. And Zodiac has all become better mentors, with Omega at least becoming able to become proud and seeing her daughter live out her dream now in peace. I had a spiel about why Zodiac lost, but I'll save that for hopefully a video this week. But yeah, I ultimately think that the final arc was a massive improvement over the manga, which I thought was just an okayish element, but I knew the anime would go out of its way to do its best to give it justice, and for the most part, I think they did a good job. But maybe I'm wrong in some areas. Maybe there are some things I didn't consider. But you all let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below, and BIP of Bizarre Productions, signing off.